Hello, everybody, and welcome to Athletic Definition. My name is Coach Ray Z, and today my guest is Rebekah. Rebekah, welcome. I was seeing if you were figuring it out. You have to tap on the monkey so that we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Awesome.
Welcome to Fireside. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you, Coach Ray?
Good, good. And thank you for being open to trying out this new format right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking me. It's the first time I've ever done anything like this. So.
All right. Well, actually, this is a new feature came out last week, the video. So you're like my third guest with the video, and
All right, right on.
pretty cool. And the reason I brought you on here is because I know a little bit of your fitness story, and it's a I've always wanted a show with people that I find inspiring, and they just have a great like story that can motivate others. So I definitely wanted to invite you on here.
Thank you. That's
And
awesome.
I know you have a day job, and then you also are a fitness instructor, and then you're competing. So are you doing all three at the same time?
I am. Well, right now I'm in a little bit of a lull. So I just finished um, my. I did two competitions this season, so I've got one more scheduled, and I'm really trying to decide whether I want to do that third show or not. So yes, so while I've been doing this, I work full time in the. I'm a technology consultant, so I run implementation projects for clients, big, small, and all over the place, implementing software and solutions. And then, when I'm not doing any of that and I'm not in the gym, I work as a group fitness instructor for a program here in the Minnesota area called Farrell's.
And what type of group fitness do you teach?
Yeah, so Farrell's is so the model of the program is it's a 10-week program, and we have members that sign up. They participate for those 10 weeks, and really the idea behind it and the intent with it is to kind of give them a foundation for making health and wellness and an active lifestyle a part of their lifestyle. So our model, we alternate a combination of strength training with free weights, and then cardio. We do kickboxing, and so yeah, and then we also incorporate kind of coaching and a community, and we help them understand basic foundations for nutrition to support that active lifestyle and the goals that our members want to get to. So that can be weight loss, that could be muscle gain, that could be endurance. And so, yeah, so I started in that program about 7 years ago. That's maybe where I would say my fitness journey really kind of began, and it's sort of grown from there.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because you mentioned you're 39 years young, and
Yeah.
I always wondered at what point do you start working out, take it seriously, or is it something you've always kind of done here and there, or you just were always into working out?
Yeah, so being an active person has always just been a part of who I am. I grew up in Duluth, which is kind of the North Shore area of Minnesota, so it's actually right on the corner of Lake Superior. And my family was always really active outside, so being outside was a big deal. So early on, actually, my first sport that I was involved in, to be honest, was running. I was a runner. So I was pretty fast. I started out. Just kind of had a natural knack for it. When I wasn't running, I was climbing. And so I grew up doing a lot of climbing on the North Shore. So rock climbing, because what do you do when you're a bored kid in a tourist town? You go climb on some rocks on the shore. So yeah. But yeah, so I was a sprinter, did track starting out in like seventh grade, all the way up through high school. And then I was actually recruited to do cross country because of my fast 1600. So that's really kind of where I think I was first an athlete, I guess I would say. So yeah, so it started out as a runner. My husband and I joke because he was really, when he was younger, into like weightlifting and strength conditioning and training, and I was the cardio person. And now our roles and our passions have changed, where now I'm the strength training and weight person, and he's the runner. So
Okay, well, I'm glad you have a husband who's supportive in that. I didn't know he's a runner. Um,
yeah, yeah.
and just for anyone listening in, and since you're new to as well, I forgot to mention you can share the link at any time. clicking on the two lines on the bottom,
Oh
and you'll
yeah.
see broadcast to the world, and then you can share the link to anybody. They don't even have to download the app to watch it or listen in. So that's a
Cool.
cool little feature as well.
Awesome. Broadcast to the world. Oh wow.
And if you are in a gym, that gym looks very or it's very quiet. So is that
It
like a
is.
private?
So no, it is not. It is so this is a Lifetime. So I do a lot of gymming. I'll say that. So Lifetime is just like a club gym. They're all over the nation, I think. And Friday nights are actually one of my favorite times to go to the gym because it is so quiet. And there's especially in the summers. So I can have a rack that's all to myself and get to do my workout at my pace. So yeah.
And have you noticed? You're in Minnesota, right?
Hmm.
Have you noticed like the people coming back after COVID, or is it you see less people at the gym?
So I think when we originally started to open up, masks were still required earlier this spring. So the gyms were pretty empty. And so for me, I was actually pretty okay with that. Means, not having to fight for benches or weights necessarily or wait for machines. I was just able to get in and do my workouts. But I know that that was a challenge for many gyms, including, big and small club gyms. And so, um, it was good when I think the mask mandates lifted here and there were more people coming back to the gyms. But then, of course, summer came, and now it's slow again. So here in Minnesota, we like to take advantage of beautiful days, and so gyms can definitely be a little bit lighter. But I think once school starts, and if things stay as they are right now, and we can still sort of move around the world free without those the masks. I think that we'll see more people coming back in, which is good too.
Right, especially if that's your other side job. You're an instructor and you rely on people to come in, and
We
I,
do, and so it's been exciting to see our classes fill up. So one of the nice things was during the pandemic, the owners of the place that I instruct at, we got together and we made the decision to take our classes virtual. So we were able to still keep our community together, still provide support and workouts for our members, and all of us had to learn how to move and work out in a little bit of a different way. But I think in some ways it brought us a lot closer to each other and really gave many people that connection. I think that was really, really hard during the pandemic, of a community and a social outlet. And then also just a place to go to stay active and um, keep that lifestyle in as a exercise is a part of that lifestyle. So that was good. But it's been fun to see people back in real life. And then when we were able to take masks off to, get to know people from the nose down again. So yeah.
yes, I really would like to hear more people just be reminded that your immune system has a lot to do with your health, and if you work out, it helps contribute to you staying healthy. It doesn't guarantee that nothing will happen, but it definitely helps. And then I know you're a competitor, and you're a
Yes.
well competitor. So
Yes.
technically, does that mean that you don't use steroids? Because you
Yeah.
seem like a natural competitor to me versus, you
Yeah,
know,
sure, absolutely. So wellness is a division within the sport that I do. So I do bodybuilding, so I tell people that, and most people will think, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like that classic image of bodybuilding. And so the divisions that I do or that I started in was actually bikini, and that's one of the smallest and most natural divisions. I'll say natural in the sense that the women that compete in it are certainly dedicated athletes. Many have been building and growing muscle for years, so their physique is definitely in a different type of level of conditioning than somebody that's just starting out. Um, they about so bikini bodybuilding has been around. I forget. I mean, it's over a decade for sure. It was a division that was added later on in the sport as kind of an opportunity to help reboost or revitalize it. For a long time, bodybuilding classically, it really started to grow in popularity. in the 70s and then in the 80s, and it really had stayed a male-dominated sport for a super long time. And then starting in the late 80s and early 90s, the women's categories began to be added, and the sport was starting to grow in popularity. But what was also happening though too is that even though it was growing in popularity with men and competitors in the public space, it wasn't. And so it was actually a dying sport. And so by adding these lower class categories, if you will, even with men's groups included, they were able to really sort of reboost it. It sort of followed, if you've been involved with like UFC, right? When UFC started out like way back in the day, it was, kind of an underground gritty sport. But when they got different leadership in there and were able to revitalize it, it's become, my husband was just watching fights last weekend. It's just one of those things. And I think bodybuilding is trying to follow that trend. And so bikini was created along with physique and figure. And then, of course, there's classic women's bodybuilding as well. But in the last 5 or so years, what's happened is because there are so many athletes that have been in the sport, regardless if they use performance enhancements or not, they've grown to a spot where we're beginning to see the development of body shapes and body types in different ways. And just like with every sport, there's the way that you naturally develop is going to be different. And so they were starting to see that there was a significant need for a category that sort of sat in between bikini and figure. And so they created a division called wellness. And wellness actually started to gain popularity actually internationally before it came here to the United States about 5 years ago. And officially, I think in 2019 was the first year that NPC, you'd have to check this because again, I'm maybe not the best athlete from a historical standpoint for this, but I think that was the first year that the NPC completely added wellness as a full-on category and brought it to the national level. So in the National Physique Committee and IFBB, which is the divisions that I compete in or that realm of the world, our big event every year is the Olympia. And so I think 2019 was the first year, I want to say, that that wellness was a recognized division and that they had their first Olympia athlete winner in wellness. Yeah. so
Yeah,
so
that's
it's been cool. Yeah. So it's to answer the question, like to kind of go long story short. Yes. So there are certain federations that allow athletes to use performance enhancements to grow to get to their goals. I am not an athlete that does that. So I do it just the good old fashioned way. Hard work and eating right and staying dedicated. So yeah. So the difference is that I went from being a bikini competitor, I'm starting out kind of smaller in a smaller division, to now being a wellness competitor, just because I tend to grow muscle more in the areas that's a better category for my body and the type of athlete I am.
Well, yeah, thank you for providing that insight. I had no idea about that extra category that they added, and and when since you are competing and you mentioned you don't really do cardio, I see you on the
Yeah.
Masters a lot. Um,
Yes. So right now, so kind of how the and every trip is different for people. So I always try to disclaim that the program that was designed for me by my coach is made particularly for my needs. And so really how training works or has worked for me in this sport is I'll spend a couple years growing. So a lot of heavy eating or heavy lifting and a lot of working on increasing my caloric intake and really getting it to max out. So getting my body to respond well by putting on mass and muscle while increasing that caloric intake. So in my past off season, I was able to work up to, and this is again 2 years of progressive lifting and training and conditioning, to a max caloric intake of 3,200 calories a day. So that's a lot of food, but it was good, and that food was fueling the workouts that I was doing and helping me really get to the goals of putting more muscle on, have more muscle development. And during that growing phase and that training phase, I do very little cardio. So I might do 2 days a week, 30 minutes of cardio a day. And so the intention behind that is that you're sort of getting your body acquired to and used to and focused on putting on mass and building muscle development. And then when you start prepping for a competition, you sort of plan out, okay, I want to do a show in this amount of time. And since I'm a natural athlete, that prep or that preparation for a competition tends to be a little bit longer. So my first prep this competition season was about 23 weeks of prep. And so in those 23 weeks, what's happening is now that we've sort of maxed out our calories, now we're going to start taking those calories down. So decreasing that caloric intake, still having lifts be pretty heavy, but then watching that caloric, that deficit start to do the job that it's supposed to do, and watching, your weight decrease, sort of that extra mass that you gain when you're putting on muscle, because it's kind of how it works. And then what's left over again is that physique that you're going to be presenting and competing with on stage. And so as you get closer and closer to that goal, an efficient way to drop weight again and to really lose that mass is to add in that steady state cardio. So the cardio that you see me doing on a regular basis it's always sort of steady state. So that's really staying in that max heart rate, like that fat burn zone, so I can still have a conversation. I kind of jokingly said I created something called slogging. So it's like stroll, jogging, walking. Like it's a pace that's pretty brisk, but it's not something that I can you and I could still talk and chat and be able to work through it. And so and the duration that I do that cardio as I get closer to that event date increases, and then the weights that I'm lifting decrease, and I also decrease. And so it's just kind of the science behind it, and that works, right? So you're really pushing that deficit through activity to get your body to get to that state that you want it to.
That's a lot of work and dedication. And then for everyone listening in, as I was reading your bio, you mentioned that you have an autoimmune disorder.
Yes, I do. So, what's interesting about my fitness journey? So, like I said, about 2012 was when it really started. So, I'm a mom as well. So, when I'm not doing all of this, I have two kids. And 2012 was I had my second child, and I was about 4 years after that, and I had gotten to a point where I was. The largest size that I've ever been in my entire life. Like I shared with you earlier, in growing up, I was a runner. I was a pretty spry kid, and so to be in a body that I felt uncomfortable with, and I was really struggling to have energy and move and be motivated, that was really where I started out. But it was also the body that I, at that time was ready. It was ready to get into making wellness a priority and figuring it out. So that's when I joined this program, Farrell's, that I, have now become an instructor for, and really began to learn the foundations for, being able to do what I do today. So I was about 3 years into that program, had really, really great results through it. Was the fittest I had been in my life. But I started to have a lot of issues with respiratory flare-ups. So it would be like asthma attacks, but they would persist for a really long amount of time. Or I started to notice that I was very tired and winded all the time, lethargic. That something as simple as going up a flight of stairs for somebody as fit as I was a challenge for me. And it was something that wasn't going away. It was getting worse. I had been diagnosed, pretty early on, and I think in my late 20s with exercise induced asthma or something like that, and they'd always just chalked it up to asthma and allergies, the condition that I had. But I finally had a doctor that was like, something's not right here for somebody that's as healthy and as active as you to be having these symptoms and persistent symptoms. You know, we got to figure something out. So she was smart enough to sort of refer me to an immunologist and a care team. Here in Minnesota, we are very fortunate to have some of the most best doctors in the world. The Mayo Clinic is world renowned. I actually wasn't through Mayo, though, that I got my diagnosis. It was here at the University of Minnesota through M Health Fairview. And that team of care team is what they sort of do. They kind of put a panel together to figure out these unique cases, and that's what I was a unique case. Was able to figure out that I have this condition called granulomatosis lung disease, and so what that is it's an autoimmune disorder where for some reason the body has decided that there is certain tissues in my lungs that it just doesn't like. So when I have what are called flare-ups, it decides to attack those tissues. And unfortunately, the tissue in your lungs, in some of the tissue in your lungs, particularly the tissue that this disorder attacks, is not something that regenerates. So I actually have probably around, what did they say last time? It was like maybe around 80% of, maybe a little bit less than that these days, lung capacity of somebody my age and my activity level. So I sort of equate it to if I had been a 5 pack a day smoker, which I'm not. That's sort of the lungs that I have today. So when I got that diagnosis, the first course of action was I needed to stop doing what I was doing from an exercise and active health perspective. Um, a lot of what I had been doing was very cardio intense on top of the program that I was a part of, that I was taking 2 or 3 classes a day in. I was doing spin and I was running. And so cardio was really, that was my world. That's what I knew. That's what I loved. That's what got me up in the morning and really got me excited. And I was told I had to stop doing all of it. And I was told if I didn't stop doing all of it, that, one, it would take and prolong my ability to heal and recover and to really be able to manage this illness that would be a lifelong condition. And that was hard. Um, I didn't take it well to begin with. I'm a stubborn person by nature and thought I could figure it out myself, and still chose to try to continue to do health and active lifestyle as I had been. And I was just really prolonging the treatment that I needed to go through, which was, again, one, getting my that flare up or that overactive response to stop happening, and then 2, to take time to really rebuild my immune system. So my course of treatment was, 1, stop physical activity, intense physical activity. 2, I had to go through a series of infusions where they really took and sorry, Siri thought I was talking to her. They essentially killed off they wanted to get my immune system to stop overreacting, so they basically wiped it out. And then I had to be on a strict diet as well to really help with that inflammation or inflammatory responses. So all the delicious food that I had loved and enjoyed, and all of that had to get taken away too. So it was a pretty rigorous process, about 18 months of wiping out a very defunct immune system, a very inflamed digestive system, and then really relearning and repairing and regrowing that slowly, and learning how to move my body again in a way that I wouldn't cause it to have issues and I wouldn't exacerbate my condition. And so how I got into weightlifting was actually because of that condition. I had lamented to one of my doctors on my care team. I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, this is what I love. Like, I live for the gym and I love doing cardio and I love kickboxing and I love running, and how am I going to ever do anything? And I think he was just trying to give me an idea, and he's like, I don't know, go do yoga or go swim or I'm like, well, those both sound terribly boring. So he's like, I don't know, maybe give weightlifting a try. And he's like, strength and conditioning. He's like, maybe not Olympic weightlifting or CrossFit or anything intense like that. He's like, but just strength and conditioning, that's a slow, steady pace that you can go at. And I think I just clung to that one thing and was like, okay, I can do that. I can do that. I've never done it, but I will do it. So, so that was in 2013, 2014. Yeah, and one of the instructors at the gym that she was a bodybuilder, and my cousin had actually encouraged me to go reach out to her, and he's like, well, why don't you ask Amy? Like, maybe she'll coach you, maybe she'll train you. And so I did. I approached her and I was like, hey, here's what's up. Like, gotta stop doing Farrells. I also have to figure out how to learn how to work out and not, you know, uh, over excite my body and end up putting it into a flare up. And so if you want to help me figure all this out and coach me, um, I'd be game. And she was. She was willing to do it. So, yeah.
Well, I'm great. I'm glad you found a coach, and you know, I'm just thinking about myself. I'm such a cardio guy. If I was going through that same situation, I would be stubborn myself. So, about how long did you keep kind of doing your thing before you realized I can't keep doing this?
It took a good 6 months of being stubborn and being unwilling to accept the diagnosis that I had and to be willing to accept the course of treatment that was provided to me. Um, and really, I look back at that, and I was I could have saved myself that 6 months, because what was happening was I was still sick. I was still struggling, and I kept thinking though that I knew how to do it better, right? And I didn't. And so, yeah, until I was finally willing to listen and to do the work that needed to be done to heal myself, which was stop, go through treatment, do this really, really not exciting diet. um, then it wouldn't have. So then after those 6 months, when I committed and I invested in doing the work to heal, that's when they got worse before they got better. Worse in the sense that, like I said, I had to really stop moving actively in the way that I had been used to, and then going through those treatments was not fun, because you're basically killing off the good and bad bacteria in your body and your antibodies, and you're very vulnerable at that point after that process. So you have to basically live in a bubble. So going through the pandemic in 2019 was sort of like I'd been there and I had done that. I knew what that experience would be like, to have to socially distance myself from people, to have to live in a space that was small, and to not be able to move in the way that I had always wanted to. So I feel like I was probably probably one of the most well prepared people going into a phase of life we all had to intentionally have to stop moving the way that we had wanted to in the world.
Yes, we did. And anytime you compete, I know it's difficult. Uh, you're reducing calories and eating. You're watching what you eat. With your, autoimmune, does it make it more difficult? Do you have to watch your diet even more, or is it about the same?
I would say it's about the same. The good thing about kind of prep nutrition is that it is very much geared towards an anti-inflammatory diet. So the food that we eat is food that most normal people eat. We just eat a whole lot less of it, and it really is. It's stuff that's going to keep kind of that system at bay. So my and so the thing is, I like going through my experience with my condition. I was already prepared to have to do the work for that nutritional piece. Definitely not the extreme restrictions on calories, but again, you sort of make the sacrifices you need to get to the goals that you want to achieve. And you know, being a little hungry and a little tired, I like to always refer to, prep as an elected struggle. I'm choosing to go through that. I'm choosing to put my body through that, but it's a struggle that's worth it, to get to that goal, and to be able to compete and do something that, what I think it's like less than 1% of the population does, right? When you're an extreme athlete, extreme sport athlete. So yeah.
And okay, so you get diagnosed, and you kind of fight
Yep.
it for a little bit, and you find a coach, you start working out.
Yep.
At what point do you start thinking, you know what, I'd like to compete again, or I think I can compete? How the process, and what kind of brought you to, I want to do that again?
Yeah, so I'd gone through kind of my 6 months, and then um, gone through kind of that year and a half or so, and I'm including that 6 months in that year and a half of healing and stuff. And when I got my coach, uh, who was willing to help kind of work towards the goals that I had wanted, which really was just I want to be able to move and I want to be able to feel normal and make exercise and active life and an activity another a part of my lifestyle was that first goal. Um, and then as we had been training progressively for about a year and a half, she was the one that actually was like, well, I think you need a goal. I'm kind of a goal orientated person. And so she's like, have you ever thought about competing, like doing a show? And I was like, no, I've never actually thought about that. And she's like, well, I think it would be a good goal for you to work towards. So she was the one that really encouraged me. um, it was funny because when she had mentioned it to me, I was like, "Well, I'm ready to go right now. Like, let's do this. Yeah, absolutely. Goal. Like, let's go." And she's like, "Well, actually, we have to do some more growing before you're going to be ready to compete." And I remember getting to that point, and really like being like, "Wait, you're the one that encouraged me to do this, and now you're saying we have to wait." But she was a smart coach in the sense that she knew that I needed more time to, um, one, manage my condition, get to the point where I would have the stamina and the wherewithal to go through a prep and do it safely in a way that wouldn't exacerbate my autoimmune. And so she said, let's train for, another 6 months and get clearance. I want you to get cleared from your doctors that this is okay for you to do and that you're going to feel like it's going to be a good choice. And we did that. And then in 2017 is when I actually began to train for my first competition season, which would be in 2018. So that fall was when we had that conversation. And then that spring, January, is when my doctors had cleared me and said, hey, you've done the work, you've healed, you have been able to, you know, build your body's um, ability to to work out and not cause issues with your system. And so I'm a rare case, and that's not to like brag or to be whatever, but they continually look at me as I'm I'm an anomaly. Most people that have this condition aren't somebody that's trying to figure out how they can weight lift and make an active lifestyle. Most people who have this condition, unfortunately, their quality of life isn't what I have been determined to make mine is, which is I wanted to get back to being an active person. I wanted to get back to being able to feel good and healthy again. And, for the most part, I am. I mean, this condition is still something that I deal with. And it can rear its ugly head anytime that it so pleases. And, since being diagnosed in 2012, I've had a few incidences of having to be hospitalized. I've had a few incidences of having to, take time off of training, and have some time to do recovery and healing, as I managed flare ups. So, yeah.
And then, earlier you mentioned you're married. Did you and your husband like to work out together before? And then with what happened, like how you can't do those type of workouts, and now he's a runner. Did that switch up the type of workout you guys did, or you guys don't really get to work out now?
Yeah, so I think it was a struggle at first for us. That was something that we enjoyed doing together, going on long runs, and he actually became a member of the program that I was a part of, and we enjoyed sharing that time together. So we had to figure out new and different ways to move our bodies. In a way that we could both show up and have that. And so, what really became a shared space for the two of us was reconnecting with the outdoors. So hiking became a really, really great um, way for us to do that. And it actually, for him, it helped his running, to have to slow down and work at a slower pace. And for me, what hiking did is it helped improve my stamina and my endurance, to be able to build sort of that resiliency that I needed to be able to compete. So we started doing, just local trails, and then we started doing state parks, and then we started doing national parks as kind of our incorporated thing. And it's still this year, because I was competing and training, we didn't get to get out like we normally do, and do quite a bit of hikes. So we've kind of missed that. But actually, coming up here in Labor Day, we have a weekend up north planned, and we're looking to get after some trails. So we're pretty excited about that.
I love trail. I highly recommend it to anybody, and it's just a great way to kind of get away from all that city noise and just go and decompress. I absolutely love it. And how many competitions have you done? And this is the time to brag. How many of them have you won?
So I have done, let's see, it'll be, I think nine. I think nine now. So I've had nine competitions in 3 seasons. So, which is great. Winning, that's a anybody that does this, again, not to like everybody gets a trophy type of vibe, but anybody that can get to the point of being able to contend on a stage, to me, is a winner. So I have placed in, I would say, over half of those competitions, in in a way that I was proud. So my first show that I did, I competed in bikini. I'm a masters competitor. I love that they call us masters. So when you compete over the age of 35, you're considered masters. So you're competing with other people that are that age, but you're also competing, depending on the classes that you choose, with either they do them by height. Height and age in NPC. And so my first season, I actually did both NPC shows and I did natural shows. So there are different federations. They just are managed and run by different folks. So I did a that first season. I was pretty aggressive with all the shows that I did. I did six that season. So, and then this season, I should say, I'm slated to do 9, so I've done 8. So I've done 2 this season. But what was crazy was it was just like, that first show I placed top 3 in my open class. So I placed third. And then I placed fifth in my master's class, which I thought was kind of unique because I thought that I would actually do better competing against people my age. But what I've learned is folks that are in those master's categories, some of these women have been competing for now, like since the inception of bikini. And so you're competing against people that have been doing this for years. So the package or the bodies, the physiques that they bring to stage are beyond pristine. Like it was a good humbling experience, but it also gave me a goal to work towards. And then I didn't know exactly which federation I would like more. There's different posing in the 2 different types of federations, and I've come to really like the posing in NPC, and I've come to like it. There's just more shows and more opportunities to compete, and I love the natural community. They're great. I have many friends that are there. I still fully support them, but I'm a NPC athlete through and through. So yeah, so that season I learned a lot about what I needed to do. And that's the thing with shows, is that every show you learn that you do, you get feedback from judges on what you need to grow and how you need to change. And so bodybuilding is a subjective sport. It's a sport about your body, right? They're judging you for that work that you've done, and they're looking for a certain type of physique. And when you get ranked on points, or you get points for those different areas. So in the divisions that I'm in, they're looking at, a good upper body development, but not overly developed. They want to see a nice tapered waist, and they want to see really good glute and hamstring, and not over development of quads when you're in bikini. In wellness, it's a little bit different. They still want that good muscle development on the top, but they also want to see that you're definitely developing both, quads and glutes and hamstrings. So it's very much a lower body dominant division, which is actually better for me because I tend to put muscle on faster in those areas. So yeah, so that first season I competed well. I was able to place top 10 in most of my groups. Again, in most federations. you only get awarded in those top 5 slots. So I wasn't always top 5, but I was glad and thankful that I was able to do those shows. And I say that it's 3 seasons because my season split over 2018 and 2019. So technically, it would be 2 seasons, so it would be 3 seasons. So then this season, I was supposed to compete last year, but the pandemic happened, so it got delayed. And in this season, I had originally had 3 shows planned or 3 competitions, and I've done 2 so far. And this was the season that I actually crossed over from bikini, where I didn't actually place top in my first show this season, which was okay. But this last show that I just did in Illinois, I placed third in my open class for wellness. And then I placed fourth in my master's class for wellness. And then I placed actually fifth because I cross competed in my open class for bikini. So yeah, I'm pretty okay with those placements. So definitely winning.
Well, congratulations on all those wins and
Yeah.
a full-time employee, uh, a fitness instructor, competitor, mom, wife. When did you have time to learn how to swim and surf? And
Yeah, so yeah, didn't definitely uh so surfing, I tried surfing this summer. So again, I'm like I said, I'm a goal, or this spring I should say, I'm a goal person. So during my off season, which happened kind of at the end of the 2018 year, I still wanted to have a goal in mind, of things that I wanted to do to stay active and to keep growing in my wellness, and but also keep having adventures and opportunities. And like I had mentioned, hiking had become a really, really big part of how my husband and I and my family and I would connect and see the world. And so uh, my girlfriend actually asked me, she was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about climbing a mountain?" And I said, "No, I've never thought about climbing a mountain before." And so she's like, "Well, what else on your list have you not thought about, but maybe would be interested in?" And I said, "I'd like to try surfing someday." So those 2 things kind of became a big goal of mine. So during my off season, I trained. I still was doing cardio quite a bit. To get that steady state cardio though, because it's really what hiking is, right? If you think about it, and training stamina wise to be able to hike and summit a mountain. So I did July of 2018. I summited Flat Top Mountain in Colorado, so that was exciting. And then this spring, prior to me getting into my competition season, I made my other goal, which was to try surfing, and to get up and actually do surfing. And I did it in the nation where I was born, so Costa Rica. And that was an exciting achievement as well. So the only training I did that involved in that was, actually, people said don't overtrain because it just makes it worse if you think about it too much. And so other than trying to understand like the techniques and form that I should be thinking about, I just kind of went into a lesson with open mind and was able to get up and ride some really cool waves in the Gulf. So it was sweet.
so, was it something you enjoyed enough where you would do it again?
I would totally do it again. So here in Minnesota, we can surf. We do get some pretty big swells up on the Great Lakes. It's cold water though, so you have to have an insulated wetsuit to do surfing here. But I'd love to try it again. And then actually, a lot of the boats here, because we have like the land of 10,000 lakes. I tried it again this summer on a friend's boat, because there's different types of boats that can actually kick up some pretty decent waves to do some surfing on. But surfing behind a boat on a small board compared to like surfing in the ocean is a completely different set of skills. So I wasn't able to get up again, but I'm excited. I actually through my season this year met a friend of mine. Her name is Vicky, and she lives in Corpus Christi, Texas. And she's like, anytime you want to come down and catch some waves, we'll do it. So I'm gonna go see her probably when it gets colder here, and I need to have a little warm up session and go do some surfing again.
Yeah, Texas. I know it gets hot over there. I'm not familiar with the waves, but I know you may do a competition. But besides that, is there anything else you have coming up?
Anything else I have coming up? Um, Yeah, so one of the great things about this competition season this year is I've really been able to reconnect with running. And so that was something that I was told, early on back in 2012 was off the books. Like I'd never be able to run again, long distance run again, maybe jog down the street back and forth. But, my doctors and my care team at the time didn't think that that was a possibility for me. And so I had to break up with it. And that for me was really hard. And so my way of breaking up with it was just sort of writing it off altogether. I became a person that didn't love running anymore. That I actually was like, nope, it's not for me. It's not what I do. Like I even had a shirt at one point that said I hate running, which was totally not who I was at that point. Um, right? I know it was devastating. I went from somebody that just loved it to like just I needed to be in a space that I couldn't do it. But this year, I asked my coach, I was like, can I train outside? Would that be okay? Like, do I really have to do all of this work on the treadmill or on the step mill? Can I try to do some running? And he was like, well, you've learned how to do heart rate regulation, and that's really the one thing that I'm sort of missing in this whole story is part of how I've been able to get my body to work the way that it does is that I have over time been able to really dial in and learn how to control and regulate my heart rate when I'm working out. That's the biggest thing. I wear a watch, a meter that monitors where my heart rate is at, and I'm really at all times trying to stay right within that max heart, like right below there, and sort of stay in that fat burn zone. So about 40, really around 70% max is where I sort of end things. So if I go above that, I don't ever, I mean, to be honest. And so to be able to train your body to have the stamina to do a workout and not increase your heart rate over a 70% max it's a lot of intentional mindset, and it's taken years, and I tell people that years to get here, and years to have the discipline to do it. But I felt like this would be the year that I could try to get back into running and achieve that goal. Now, what did that mean and what did that look like? It meant that I wasn't going to be a rock star. I wasn't going to be running like 5:45 miles, I wasn't going to be, doing stuff, but if I could run a mile, I was like, if I could run a mile and be okay with that and be able to get there and do that and stay within my heart rate zone that I needed to, then that would be the accomplishment. And so I was able to do that. And then I was able to do 2 miles. And then I was able to do 3 miles. And then the times on those miles started to get down because, again, I had to do, first 30 minutes of cardio, then 40 minutes of cardio. And when you're running a 10-minute mile or an 11-minute mile or even a 12-minute mile, that cardio goes by pretty quickly. But it was exciting to start to see those mile times come down and my heart rate to still stay the same. So this year, just on a whim as part of kind of my training, I added in some 5Ks. So I've been able to do now 3 5Ks. And then my goal coming out of this off season is definitely I'll be 40 next year. I'll be in an off season next year. And I would like to run a half marathon. So I'd like to get all the way up to 13 miles. So that's the goal.
Well, I definitely think you could do it, and I know what you're saying about having to be controlled when you're running and trying to keep that heart rate under a certain rate, especially in a race. You get all excited. There's you just want to take off, and I see it all the time. People just take off, especially in a marathon, too excited, and then it's like mile 15, mile 18, mile 20, and they're walking, and I'm running because they couldn't control their excitement, which is kind of what you're saying, being able to control it. But it does take a lot of discipline because even though I know I want to get lost in the moment.
Yes. Yeah, it does. And again, I started way back in the beginning of my story. Hold on. I was a sprinter, and so that still is a part of me. And it's hard not to get excited. But it's again, it's that thing that you learn to control. I still do like a little sprint at the end, right? Like you got to kick it over that finish line, save a little bit, which my husband is always impressed with. He's like, I don't know how you have the stamina to just like kick it in every time. And I was like, well, it's how you were trained, right, as a runner. So yeah. So like I said, it's been exciting to sort of go from a place where I loved running. It was something that I did all the time, to not having a good relationship with it, to bringing it back into training. Now, most um, traditional bodybuilders and anybody that's listening here to this, they're probably like, even my coach is like, oh God, you in the running, like, please don't run, and the reason why they don't want us to run is, again, most people that are running are pushing their heart rates over that into that cardio rate, and that's actually, again, when you're working for long periods of time in that zone, your body is looking for good, plentiful, efficient fuel sources, and that source is your muscle. And so the reason why they don't want you to do that is because you've worked so hard to build all of that muscle, and if you go and run, um, and you're at a deficit, and it's like, screw that, like, I'm just going to use my most, the easiest, source of burning energy, clean energy that we have. Look at that delicious muscle. That's what the body goes towards, and so that's why they discourage it. So my coach has been impressed that I've been able to retain the muscle mass that I have and run. But again, just like my doctors, he's like, you're kind of an anomaly. So yeah.
Well, I would definitely like to have you back once you complete your half marathon and we could see how it went.
Yeah.
If, and I didn't put it up on the fortune cookie, but if you want, I could put your Instagram up here. If you want to give out any of the information where people can follow you, it's really up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram. My handle there is a rare kind. The reason behind that is, again, like, it comes from that story of, the doctors kind of, they're like, you're just kind of a rare case. You're a rare kind. And, one of the things I always tell people, though, too, is, through my journey, really kindness has been a huge theme, and not just from other people, but definitely to myself. Even where I started, I look back at that point in my life, and rather than being unkind to myself and feeling shame or guilt about where I started, that is the body that I started with. That is the place that I was at. And I'm thankful for that person choosing to make wellness a part of their lives versus having shame and looking at it and saying, I was fat, I was ugly, sort of a negative way of looking at it. I wasn't those things. And the other thing I think is important that I try to really stress with wellness is that, uh, our bodies are intended to change and to grow into different ways. And so to be kind to it, no matter the phase that it's at, if you're at the peak of your physical training and conditioning, be proud. If you are at a point of recovery, you know, be grateful, and even if you're at a place where, you're uncomfortable, it's in those moments that's where you make great change, right? That's how you get from one spot to the next. And so I'm thankful for and grateful for this body that I have, even if it isn't the most ideal one. And just, to treat your journey and to treat your wellness with kindness. And so that's kind of where the a rare kind comes into play. So yeah, if people want to follow me, that's there. And two, I always try to share my story authentically. And to disclaim too, that sport I do is an extreme sport. I'm an extreme sport athlete. The work that I do to get my physique into the spot that it is not a sustainable condition. It is a point in time that lasts between 11 and 16 hours. And then I go back to being a regular human being. And so I think that's an important part of it too. And is to recognize that's, I love it. It's something that I do it because it's an elected struggle. It's a way that I've been able to make fitness and wellness a part of my life, but it is not everything for me. And so, yeah.
Well, I went ahead and put your IG right there on the fortune cookie, so anyone
Cool.
listening in can follow along. And then I'll once I get it up on Amazon, Spotify, everywhere else, I
Oh
will
my goodness.
on there as well. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me, Rebecca. I really appreciate it. You taking time out of your training schedule and mom and wife and everything else
Yeah.
to share your story with us. And as I mentioned, I definitely want to have you back to complete.
Yeah.
And then you can tell us if you decided to compete again. And thank you for joining in, everybody. This is Athletic Definition AZ. I typically don't do back-to-back shows, but I'm doing one today. Next up, I have Dylan, who is a professional runner, who who's a Native American, and through his running adventures, got to go to the White House. And
Very cool.
he's
All right. Well, thanks so much, Coach.
thank you. And once again, I'll mute the robot and everybody who popped in too as well. Thank you very much.